Today we're going to be looking at the simple present, and this is the tense that we use, the verb tense that we use for habits and routines and general truths. Let's talk about the uses. When I talk about my habits, I use the simple present to talk about my habits. This is the usual practice. So, for example, here's a girl, and then something you can notice is that she has a habit. What is her habit? Her habit is that she passes her test. It's not one time in the past, it's not one time in the future, and it's not in the present. It's a habit that she does in the past and the present. Okay, again and again and again, she passes her test. Let's look at another example. Here are these two students, okay, and what is their habit? They study hard. One time in the past? No. One time in the future? No. Right now in the present? Maybe yes, maybe not. But most important, it's a habit, a routine. They do again and again and again and again. They study hard, not one time, but every day. They study hard. So we use the simple present for habits and routines. Okay? She passes her tests again and again and again, every day, every time. They study hard every day, every time. Okay. Another thing that you need to remember is that to add SES to third person singular nouns. We'll talk a little bit about this later. Okay. We also use the simple present to describe timeless truths. So, for example, here's a timeless truth. It's true yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And what is that? Okay, ice melts in the sun. All right, if it's hot enough, ice will melt in the sun. Okay, ice melts in the sun. Is this true in the past? Yes. Is it true in the present? Yes. Will it be true in the future? Yes. Let's look at another example. Okay, birds fly. This is a timeless truth. They flew in the past, they will fly in the future, and they fly in the present. Okay, birds fly. And remember to add S and ES for third person singular nouns. Okay, let's talk about form now, and let's talk about third person. What is third person? Well, let me show you some examples. Here I have two verbs, studies and study. They're both the same verb, but study ends with a Y, and studies has the IES. This is a plural verb. So I say I study, he studies, it studies, you study, she studies, they study, the student studies, the teachers study. Okay. He, it, she, and the student are third person singular nouns. When you have he, it, she, and the student, you're going to add ES and S to your verbs, okay? Let's look at this a little bit more. So, for example, with I would say I run. With we say we work. You sleep. They sing. Plural nouns. Birds sing. But he, she, it, and the singular noun, we add ES and S, okay? This is the third person. Mainly, think of the third person as not you, not I. But if I'm talking to you, I can talk about another person who's not there. If they're singular and they are not there, that's the third person. So I can be talking about he, I can talk about she, I can talk about it, I can talk about another person. If they're not there, and it's one, that's a third person singular. To these nouns, we add ES and S. So, for example, he runs. She works. It buzzes. The singular noun, Jack sings. Okay? Now, sometimes we add ES and sometimes we add S. So, when do we add ES? When do we add ES? Well, we use ES if the verb ends with an S, such as I pass the test, he passes his test. Z, such as quiz, I quiz you, she quizzes us. Sh, I finish, she finishes her work. Ch, I teach, he teaches a class. Okay, now let's talk about how to make questions. So, we take our regular sentence, she passes her test, they study, and we add do at the beginning to make a question. So, for example, they study, Do they study? That's it. That's all I do. There's one exception though. If I have a third person singular noun and then my verb has an es or an s in it, then we have to change it a little bit. Okay? So she passes her test. Does she pass her test? The es moves from the verb and goes to the auxiliary do. So we don't say do she passes her test? No, we say does she pass her test? Okay, let's look at this a little bit more. So she travels. Okay, we add do, and the do gets the tense. So does she travel? The es moves to the do. To make a WH question, we just add a WH question word. These are who, what, where, when, why. So yes, no question. Does she travel? WH question. Where does she travel? Let's look at another example. He studies. Okay, think of the yes, no question. Take 5 seconds to make the yes, no question in your mind or to say it out loud. 5 seconds. Okay, the yes, no question. Does he study? Remember, we're going to move the es from the verb study to the auxiliary do. So does he study? Okay, and a WH question, make a WH question with why. Why does he study? Okay, let's move on now. Let's look at another example. They play soccer. Okay, take 5 seconds to make the yes, no question. Okay, the yes, no question. Do they play soccer? Now, make a WH question with where. Okay, where do they play soccer? Good. Remember, with do, because we don't have an es here, we don't add es to do. And then below here, for the WH question, we just add a WH question word to the yes, no question. Let's look at one more, our last example. It eats. Think of the yes, no question for it eats. Okay, does it eat? So we move the es to the do auxiliary. Now think of a WH question with does it eat? Okay, using why. 5 seconds. Okay, and WH question, why does it eat? Okay. Oh, one more example. You teach English. Take 5 seconds to do a yes, no question with you teach English. Do you teach English? Now, take 5 seconds to ask a WH question with do you teach English using where? And where do you teach English? Okay, let's move on now and let's talk about not, how to negate our simple present. Okay, to negate, we add not, and what we do, well, let's look at this example. Here we have he studies. Does he study? Well, he didn't do well on his test, so we're going to want to negate this sentence. So to negate, to make it a negative, to say it's not true, we're going to add do and es and not before the verb. So here our verb is studies, so we're going to add do before the verb. So he does not study. Again, whenever I add the auxiliary do, the verb tense, the es and the s are going to move to the auxiliary do. So we say he does not study. Okay, he does not study. Let's look at another example now. Okay, so here are these two kids. Okay, they play. Do they play a lot? Does it look like they play? No, it doesn't look like they play. So we're gonna need to change this. Okay, so we need to negate this. Okay, we need to add do and not to this. So what are we gonna do? They play a lot. They do not play a lot. Okay, and again, the verb play doesn't have e or s, so there's nothing to move to do, the do auxiliary. Okay, let's move on now. So as a quick example, he studies. He does not study. Okay, we add the es moves from the study to the do auxiliary, so he does not study. And then to contract, remember the do auxiliary gets the tense, and then to contract does and not, the contraction occurs between do and does and not. So does not, doesn't, do not, don't. Okay, let's look at another example. We're going to use the example with like. They like the pie. Try to negate this. Try to add do and not to there. So try to negate it. Ready? Take 5 seconds. Okay, we're going to add do and not before the verb. The verb is like, so they do not like the pie. Now we're going to contract it. So the contraction, they don't like the pie. Okay, let's do a quick summary now. So remember, we use the simple present for habits and timeless truths. Okay, so they study every day. Yesterday studied yesterday. They are studying right now. They will study today and they will study tomorrow. They study every day. Remember to use the verb plus es for third person singular nouns. So I eat the pie, you eat the pie, but he eats the pie. To make a question, we add do and es at the beginning of the sentence. So I study, you study, he studies, does he study? Okay, remember the verb tense is going to go, the es will move from the verb to the do auxiliary. Okay, and lastly, to negate, we add do and not at the before the verb. So he does not study, and the es goes from study to do. Okay, that's it. Thank you so much for watching this presentation. If you have any thoughts, questions, or concerns, please email me. Please have a nice rest of your day. Thank you so much for watching.